Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Powered by Rock podcast. We're going to be speaking with an alternative rock legend today, a Seattle icon, formerly of the band The Presidents of the United States of America, the man himself, Chris Ballew. I assume that's how you pronounce it, correct? That is Ballew?
You did it right off the bat. No correction.
Fantastic. This is one bad man when it comes to the world of rock music, with multiple hit tracks, a multi-platinum record, and about 50 albums attributed to him over the last 30 years. That's almost 2 albums a year for 30 years. That's pretty good staying power. I'm endlessly fascinated by Chris, and I can't wait to discuss everything from his newest solo albums to his second career as a children's song creator to, well, whatever the hell he wants to talk about, because I'm here to listen to it all. We'll crack the egg of his knowledge and drink the musical yolk right after this.
You're listening to the Powered by Rock podcast with your host, Isaac Kuhlman. The Powered by Rock podcast was created to help showcase some of the best rock musicians in the world and to pass on to future generations the rock music that has inspired rock fans around the world for decades. We want listeners to be able to hear great stories and life experiences directly from their favorite artists, as well as dig deeper into music theory and talk rock like no other show you've ever heard. This isn't about looking cool, it's about getting real and having a great time. Without further ado, let's start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Powered by Rock podcast. I'm truly an honor today as I have a guest that I've been one of my favorite musicians for pretty much most of my life, over 25 years now. I actually remember calling into those old phone services like Dial a Song or whatever it's called to let you listen to like 30-second clips. And I probably did that like over 100 times just to hear Lump when it first came out. So, you know, I remember having that when I was probably 11 or 12, trying to get into that. And that 1-800 or 1-900 number, whatever it was, probably got a lot of, little cents and 50 cents per whatever I did. But, I have rocked out to the music since I was in like 7th or 8th grade. I'm pleased to bring on the show an OG of the alternative rock scene, a true rock icon, Chris Ballew. Woo! Yeah. Thanks for being here, man. This is awesome. I'm pretty excited. So, I think a lot of people have probably kind of lost track of you since, probably late 90s, early 2000s, after probably either the second or third President's album, because you guys did go pretty independent after your Columbia deal expired and you got all your, masters back and everything like that. But kind of let's talk a little bit about this, because you, over the last 10 years, have actually had a second career as a children's song creator, where you went by Caspar Babypants, and that was the moniker you had, and you did 19 albums in like 10, 11 years, something like that. So kind of explain to me, what does that meant to you, and how did this kind of come about in the first place?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird story because I didn't decide to make kids music. During the entire time that the Presidents were, kicking ass, or for lack of a better term, I had this funny sort of message that was running through my head or gut or somewhere. And it was saying, congratulations on all your success, but this is not your final destination. And I was like, really, little voice? Are you going to keep me in the trenches, like working hard now that I've made it and I'm a rock star? And the little voice was like, yep, you got to keep on working. So I just kept feeling this impulse that I had to search for something else besides the rock band. Some of that was, musically, I have a very rich, diverse, kaleidoscopic range of tastes. Sure. I like everything. I like good songs. I don't care what the genres are. So the rock band, we did some genre hopping for sure, but the guitar, bass, drums, vocal kind of thing are like primary colors to me, to use a painting metaphor. I wanted to use weirder colors, more subtle colors. And so I think that was also an impulse to kind of search around. So anyway, I started searching around on the side. I started forming and breaking up bands on the side, making albums under different weird band names, trying different instruments, very disparate group of experiments. And eventually, after it took like 12 or 15 years of me kind of experimenting to get to a point where I was playing quieter songs, more acoustic, kind of more innocent sounding. Still lyrically, I didn't have a real clear point of view. I just knew that it felt good to get small and simple, as opposed to the loud, rock band taking up all the bandwidth. And then I met my second wife, Kate, and her artwork is this like world of, collage, folk arty animals. They're bright. they're whimsical, but they're really well made, like really well constructed and very solid. And like, you can tell she knows how to draw just by how she cuts out shapes. There's something behind it that gave it kind of gravitas. And I was like, that's it. I want to make music that sounds like it comes from that planet. And so I sat down and recorded a couple songs inspired by her artwork. And then, like, you know, it just shot through me like as Marlon Brando says in Apocalypse Now, like a diamond through the, like a diamond. Just wham. I was like, oh, I should be making music for little kids. And I felt this absolute like light, like, oh, that's what I've been searching for all this time. Part of it is I felt excited to make music in a genre that isn't about hits, and it's not about convincing people you're cool. It's really like, I decided early in that process to make it more in service to families.
Sure.
So as I made those albums, I thought, okay, what does a family really need? I used to imagine a family of 5 in a car in August, leaving Yosemite National Park in 95-degree heat. Everybody's hungry and tired and mad, and they all have to pee. And you should be able to put in a Caspar Babypants album, and even in that terrible environment, the mood will lighten. So with that in mind, I would listen literally to mixing, and I'd be like, okay, how's that family doing with this mix? Oh, that banjo is too much, or that mandolin. Generally, it was the banjo and mandolin had to come out. But anyway, the point is, I really wanted to be in service in a way that I think the rock band was too. We were in service to making everybody happy, but this was more of a focus, like, how do I aesthetically engage a parent and a child, and really not just pay lip service to that endeavor, really do this like hard work and the editing and the creative work that is necessary to really make that happen. So yeah, it was exciting. I got back to my DIY roots with Caspar Babypants. You know, it was more of a punk rock thing. You know, a little kid at a Caspar show is more punk rock than any punk rock show, you know, over the decades. I mean,
I heard some of the stories where a kid went and turned your amplifier off, and other people will just kind of come up and mess with you while you're playing.
Yeah. One time I was doing an outdoor show, and the sound, and there wasn't really a barrier between me and the kids. I used to sit down on a stool and be more near their level. And I got swarmed, as I used to be, with kids. And all of a sudden the sound went crazy, like feedback and everything. And I look over at the soundboard, and there was a sound guy, but he was gone. And there was a little like wispy haired kid in just a diaper, just like moving all the faders. So when does that happen at a punk rock show? Never.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So really, bottom line, it was about getting back to my roots, about using all the colors in my paint box, because in that context of making music for kids, I could genre hop and do all kinds of stuff, but I could also include strings and keyboards and weird percussion stuff. And you know, the sky was the limit, really. It was fantastic. So it was really just like about getting out of that sort of primary color palette and flexing my creative chops and being in service to families.
Yeah, and I've listened to the music. I kind of looked you back up and a couple of things like about a year and a half ago, like where are these guys now? What are they up to? And I know that you guys released all the albums. I did not realize that you were releasing new solo albums, because I think it was before that. And then I didn't realize that you had done the children's songs until I have an 18-month-old now, and he's listening to like Elmo Radio on Spotify or something. And all of a sudden Caspar Babypants comes up, and I'm like, I know that voice. Like, I definitely know that voice. Yeah. That's the guy from the President of the United States. Like, that's Chris Ballew. So like, I look it up and I'm like, holy crap, he's got 19 albums of this stuff. I was like, that's crazy.
I know. When I finally found that chemistry and that purpose, that wasn't about, look at me, I'm cool. It was about really serving families. The floodgates just opened like crazy. I mean, I couldn't stop writing songs. I'm in another version of that now, but we'll get to that. But yeah, I find that when I find my place creatively, it's just a huge volume of stuff comes out, and then maybe that peters out, and then another one kind of pops up. But yeah. So that's why there's so many records. I just had to hold on for dear life and all the songs out. But eventually, after 19 records, I was like, that's it. I think that's it. 352 songs, and I'm done.
Yeah, that's a pretty gigantic amount of catalog for any artist, let alone a 10-year span.
And there's no fat. It's a lean. I mean, I was ruthless with my songwriting. I had my brother and a bunch of other people help me really weed out the weaklings. And so I don't believe in releasing mediocre stuff. At least I try not to. So anyway.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that because I think the new albums that you've put out are awesome as well. But
thank you.
You know, obviously we should address the elephant in the room for those who, you know, might think the Presidents were just like a flash in the pan. You know, hey, you got like 2 hits back in the 90s. Like, what happened to you guys? Like, I think that's a pretty unfair view because you guys actually made music all together all the way up until 2015, had some awesome albums that a lot of people didn't realize were kind of released on, you know, either digital platforms or independent labels. But a lot of people are thinking like, whatever happened to those guys? Can you just kind of, you know, barely sort of, you know, basically go through the ups and downs and just kind of explain what happened, what, you know, why you were going up and why going down, and, you know, just kind of give it like, you know, a 5-minute treatment real fast?
Yeah. Well, the Presidents were just another in a long line of bands that I'd had with kind of a core group of people that different people came in and out. Some of the songs transferred from band to band. And so the Presidents was kind of another in a long line. But the difference was I was living in Boston and New York for 8 years or 9 years in the mid 80s or early 80s to early 90s. And one day I woke up and I was like, what am I doing? I need to go back home. I need to go to Seattle. Yeah. And I went home, and the joy of reconnecting with my hometown kind of informed, it was a new level of sort of emotion that I hadn't had when I was living on the East Coast or before I left for college, when I was kind of a forming songwriter. So I had this like, I just want to share like this feeling. And so the Presidents became sort of a vessel for that joy, you know, which I hadn't had before. And so I think that's why the song sparked. And some of the songs had been like Naked and Famous and Candy had been around for other bands and stuff, but they didn't. Dave and Jason and my particular attitude kind of made it all kind of click. And it was, you know, the songwriting was kind of like this innocent stuff, but it was also innuendo. There was like sexuality and kind of like how those two played. I didn't understand that at the time. I didn't understand the chemistry of what I was doing. To me, it was like painting a painting with my eyes closed, and trying to do it again was really hard. So anyway, in that context, we played one show. I mean, we played a lot of shows, but one of our shows, it turned out, had 7 major label reps at it. And I didn't know that was the case. I didn't know it was a big deal. We just did our wacky show. And the next day we had 7 major label record offers. And so we had to go from really quickly from like hanging out with our friends all afternoon, smoking pot and doing a barbecue and playing frisbee and going to the local club and playing a show, to running a global enterprise, you know?
Yeah.
So very quickly we split into 3 factions. Dave, our guitar player, learned how to read contracts and negotiate deals. Jason took care of late night PR. He would get drunk until the dawn with the people we had to impress. And, you know, of course, played great drum part. He was a great drummer. I took care of creative, like coming constantly with new ideas and stuff like that. And, you know, our duties spilled over here and there, but really we were like a 3-headed hydra. So, and we decided, okay, we're going to do this lean. We're not going to waste all of our money getting tour support and having a big fancy bus. We did a bus tour a couple times and we're like, too much. So we were a van band mainly. And it was a fantastic ride. You know, like this huge sense of validation. We had all these important people in suits in New York telling us we were great songwriters, you know, kind of blowing smoke. We could feel that too. But also there was on the other end of the spectrum for me, inside me, I was feeling very weird about the whole thing. Like, I come from a DIY punk rock world, and this whole hitching our pony to a major label felt weird, felt kind of unnecessary. And we kind of came up with this idea, let's try to promote the band on a national level somehow without appearing to promote the band on a national level. So we got little amps and guitars, and we went around. We spent all of September of 1995 like flying 2 or 3 times a day to different cities to play at one-stop record distributors, to play at record stores, to play at radio stations, to just like pepper the people that were the gatekeepers at the time with good vibes. Like we'd stand on a desk in a boardroom at a record plant, a record warehouse, and play a rock show on a table. Nice. And it was fantastic. It was super fun, and it totally worked. We got all this.
Take notes, everybody, in an up and coming band.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you do that now. I mean, it's a whole different world. I mean, the gatekeepers are people who make playlists on Spotify. So
yeah, exactly.
you go
a
play
little different.
Yeah.
Well, go find their house and stand on their kitchen table and play a concert.
Exactly. So with that, I felt this weird kind of conflict. I was like very satisfied and happy that we'd been acknowledged and we were making money and we were playing for giant crowds. But I also felt like this is not safe. This is not tenable. I felt like metaphorically I had gotten into that room that I'd always imagined in my mind, like a velvet rope and a door. And it's like, get in there when you're famous. And there's all this, everything's fine. And your hard work is over and everybody else who's famous is in there. But when I metaphorically got in that room, I noticed, wait a minute, there's another door. And it goes to another room and it goes to another door and another room and another door and another room. Yep. And meaning I will always have to be sort of proving myself and under pressure,
Yep.
And I just was like, I don't want that. But I was, I'm a people pleaser. It's why I make music, but it's also what makes me say the opposite of what I really need sometimes. So
yeah,
I rode the whole arc of the presidents kind of feeling this like, I want out, but outwardly appearing to be the guy. And I was good at it. It was great. I could totally manage the two. But eventually I went to a band meeting in 1997 and said, you know what? First order of business, I quit.
Yeah.
And there was some relief among all of us, but it was kind of sad. And I regret doing it so bluntly and not really having a dialogue with those guys about it before I dropped the guillotine.
Yeah.
But we did a last show in January of '98. It was fantastic. And then we were broken up for 5 years. But during that time, we made a digital or a kind of, I don't know what it was. It wasn't digital at the time. We made physical copies, but it was like a weird album. It was called Freaked Out and Small.
Yeah.
And it was playing all of our songs, my songs that were written on 4-string bass and 6-string guitar that didn't translate to the 2- and 3-string thing that we did in the Presidents. So it was like a clearinghouse thing. It's a long story how we set that up, but it was with a company called Music Blitz, and it was supposed to be under the radar, a total diamond in a dog poo that somebody would find and be like, what is this? But Music Blitz turned it into, they're reunited and this is their comeback album, and served all the, radio stations and stuff as if this was our comeback record, which it was not. Which would haunt us later in 2004 when we actually did make Love Everybody, which was our real record to, say, here they are again. And all the radio stations and stuff were like, no, we heard your weird comeback record. We're not giving you any bandwidth. We're like, So anyway, during that 5 years, we made that record, and which I love, by the way. And we formed a band with Sir Mix-a-Lot called Subset. So we were like working together and creative and all that stuff, but just not as the band, Technically, we had to break up in order to get out of our major label recording contract. I mean, like, I called the president of Columbia, or our guy at Columbia, and just said, hey, we broke up. And he's like, you're done. See ya.
Yep.
So anyway,
it turns out they don't really care about your what you're not doing for them anymore.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a well-worn meme or headline, major label doesn't care about you as a person.
Yeah.
Film at 11. But we got back together in 2004 because of Chris Novoselic. He invited us to be his backing band at a NARAS, National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences event where he was being honored. He needed a band and he wanted us to show up as the Presidents and back him up. And we did some covers. We did a couple of his songs. Yeah. And that was the first time we all looked at each other after 5 years of being apart and went, yeah, this is an interesting reason to call ourselves the Presidents again. And that kind of got us together in the rehearsal space. And then we started saying, wow, these songs are fantastic. We just got lost in the weeds of the minutia of being successful.
Yeah.
Songs are like shining diamonds, man. Let's share them with people. So we started doing shows, and it was like being in the world's greatest Presidents cover band, all the like emotional.
They even look like them.
Yeah, we look like them and we sound like them. Oh, it's amazing. But so we got back together and it just felt really cool and easy. And we started doing a show here and there. We did some college shows. And anyway, that ramped up into making Love Everybody in 2004. That was New Year's Eve 2002 is when we got back together. Love Everybody came out in 2004. Right after that, Dave Dieter, our guitar player, was like, he kind of felt, I think, like I did in the 90s.
Yeah.
But just the mechanics of being away from home and his kids and
Sure.
his world, he just like, I can't do it anymore. So we got Andrew McCaig. It was a big thing. Jason and I were like, all right, we got, a lot of options for guitar players, but who's going to be comfortable playing Dune Buggy?
Yeah.
Because Dune Buggy is such a funny, weird little, song. And like, that was the litmus test, is like, who can rock out and have chops, but also can play this stupid little song about spiders driving a car. We found Andrew, who we'd all known for years. He'd been around, and he was willing to do it, willing to play a 3-string. He's an amazing 6-string guitar slinger, but he was willing to, like Dave, a great guitar player on the 6-string, but was willing to hog tie himself with a 3-string. So that was another requirement. We got Andrew, and then we did another 13 years, or I guess, what was that, 2004? We did another 11 years with Andrew. And we did a lot. We made 2 records with Andrew and toured all over the world and played festivals again, and got to do all the stuff we did in the 90s, but without the emotional baggage. So
and the pressure and the recording studio down your back, or
but I was still, that was during the time I was still on the hunt for what became Caspar Babypants. And then once Caspar Babypants clicked in 2008, we also made a record in 2008, and I was doing both for about 6 years, and it was workable, but I did like hundreds of shows a year as Caspar, and like, maybe 30 shows a year as a Presidents.
And you were managing that all yourself, booking it, all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. With Caspar, for sure. I was doing everything. And then Caspar got more and more successful, and the venues got bigger and bigger. And pretty soon I was like, well, I think the President's arc has arced. I mean, in my mind, I think bands should be together like, a college experience, 4 years, you sophomore, junior, and senior year, and then you graduate. But this time I gave Jason and Andrew about 3 years notice. I said, every time I get on an airplane, it's for you guys. I don't want to go anymore, but I'm going to do it. I'm a pro. We have shows booked and everything. I'm not dropping you like a hot potato, but give them 3 years notice, and then drop the hatchet. And and when our last show was just another show, it was a festival in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Nice. And it's a little unfair to them. I kind of screwed up again. I didn't tell anyone it was the last show. I just knew it inside. And then I called them a couple days later and was like, all right, that was it. I don't know. We did a big last show in 98, and I just felt like this time would just like, turn off the light switch and quietly like recede.
Like the last episode of Cheers or something.
Right, exactly. Just flip the switch. Anyway, I think that's kind of the arc.
Awesome.
Hopefully that does the trick.
I just wanted to kind of clarify for anybody who doesn't know a couple of references you made. So Chris Novoselic, former bassist of Nirvana, big musician in Seattle still to this day. Been doing solo since then.
He's a big.
Yeah. He's like 6'5", 6'6", something like that.
He's a big man.
Dune Buggy I wanted to mention was actually, ever since I started like listening to your new stuff, that song has been stuck in my head every single day. And I'm like, I haven't heard that song in probably 15 years. And I'm like, Little Dune Buggy. And I'm like, I just cannot get it out of my head.
Now that is interesting, because that is a dynamic in songwriting that I call generosity. Like, is this song generous? Meaning, could you hear it and then walk away from it and not hear it again for years and still have the gift of the melody? I look at it as a gift.
It's amazing. Like you have so many other songs. I mean, Peaches is worldwide famous. Lump is pretty famous. And, the other songs on that album, I would always just sit there and be like fascinated. I'm like, he's literally painting a picture of like a little bug moving around, doing something, whatever. And I'm like, that's incredibly, observant, but also musically so creative. I've never heard anything like that.
Yeah. It's a real memory. When I was a little kid, it actually was a police car, a Matchbox police car. It went down a heat register and got stuck like just about 6 inches down where the pipe curved. And one day I was messing around. I don't know why. I used to like to look down into the empty heat registers in the house, and I took off the cover and looked down, and there was my Matchbox police car. And when I took it out, there were 2 spiders in the front seat, almost with their arms over the back of the seat, like, the 2 like Adam 12, the 2 like cops in the old-fashioned cop car, and that mutated into a dune buggy because it just sounded better.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Dune buggy, bugs buggy. So
yep. Exactly, like a double entendre.
So in my mind, when I wrote Dune Buggy, I really saw a picture, and that's actually a lot of what I did with Presidents and Caspar. Less so now with this new stuff, but it was like seeing a hilarious picture or seeing a character that I anthropomorphized, and then just describing it in the lyrics, so it could be decoded, kind of like a radio show or a radio play or something. Like, here's the picture.
Yeah, very Orson. Was it Orson Welles or
Orson Welles? Yeah. War of the Worlds.
Yep. Without the mass hysteria, but I digress.
kind of, you want.
Oh yeah, in the opposite direction, I guess, in the pleasant mass hysteria.
Right. You want, like the Beatles had mass hysteria, right?
Yeah. So let's get into the new solo music, because I think that this is as good as anything you've ever written. And I mean, you've released 3 albums now in literally 1 year, because you started working and you said, I'm going to release July, January every year for the foreseeable future. So July, first one came out last year, January this year, July this year, new one called Primitive God. First of all, how are you able to make so much music without ever making any bad music? That's my first question.
Well, the thing is with these new records, first of all, thank you very much for the accolades. It's funny, I do this stuff at home, really in a vacuum. I'm not playing it live, and I'm working alone, which I love. But I have 2 friends, Pete Droge, who was a singer-songwriter in the 90s and still is, and my friend Mark Heberlein, who's a massive music collector and an English teacher. And Pete kind of takes care, they both give me feedback on big batches of songs. Right now, Mark has something like 82 songs that he's working on feedback for me.
Wow.
Like, he'll listen. Mark is an English teacher, like I said, and a collector. So he listens in the context of the world of music and the lyrics, and like, what's my intention? What picture am I painting? Yeah. And Pete is more of a guy who hears sonic, like too much tambourine or hi-hat or too much low end or something.
More technical.
Yeah. They're kind of my like co-producers in a way, even though they're not in the trenches every day, but they're giving me feedback. So I do a lot of editing and work toward making these albums the best I can do. I kind of I like to pretend when I make these new albums that I'm, Billie Eilish level, and the whole world is waiting with bated breath for my new album. So it kind of like puts the pressure on me to kind of, when I'm in the finishing stages, to really like, is this the best it can be? Is that solo like the right solo and stuff like that? But then in reality, I have no pressure at all. I'm like a hobbyist now. I'm like a guy who goes into his woodshed on the weekends and makes chairs. Yeah. So I kind of have a little mantra. It's like, nobody cares. I'm just making chairs. I temper that with like, everybody cares, and it should be the best it can be. So
it's like those self-inflicted deadlines, but really it's just to help you stay focused.
Yeah, to help me stay focused. Yeah. And sort of, I find that I need time since I'm working alone. The 2 albums a year, I thought this year, I'm like, oh, maybe I should do 3, because I'm sitting on 80 songs that are almost done. But, I'm like, no, I need to let them, like the way, alcohol ages, like wine. They have to age. I have to live with them for 6 months, and forget about them and then hear them again. So it's a fun, like, I feel more like I went to art school, and I feel more like a painter or a sculptor these days than a performer. In fact, I'm kind of retired from performing for the time being. I'm not doing it. I realized during the pandemic, I felt really relieved when I didn't have shows, and I started exploring that. Like, why do I feel so relieved? And I realized like 85% of doing live shows is stressful. 15% is orgasmic and amazing and like transcendental and all that. But I just wasn't willing anymore to go through the 85% that was hurting my nervous system.
For sure. I mean, if there was like a teleportation and like something's, it's already set up, you don't have to worry about it, and you could just teleport right on stage, you'd be like, that's fantastic. I'll do this all the time.
Yeah, right. No sound check. Sounds perfect. Yeah. Well, the nice thing about the Caspar thing is I brought my own sound system and I worked it out so it sounded really good. And I reduced some stress, and it was just me. So I wasn't dealing with asking band members if they could make the shows and stuff.
Yeah. I've always said that trying to get people in a band to show up for even like a band practice is like herding cats. It's It's like, wow, I just want to play music. Does nobody else want to play music anymore? Okay, I guess it's just me then.
I mean, that's a big revelation. Is I really feel like I started out life with my boombox and my mom's boombox, doing sound on sound back and forth, alone. Like the thrill of being alone in my bedroom, playing with recorded music and screwing around with it. That's the foundation of who I am as a creator. The whole being in a band thing was great live. But presidents were very confused by the studio. We didn't know how to use the studio. Are we trying to capture what we did live? Are we trying to be like, the Beatles during Sgt. Pepper's and really use all the colors in the paint box? And that kind of didn't work because it kind of took away the fundamental energy core of the band. But working alone, I absolutely love just be the science, the mad scientist, vibe of being. Yeah. Yeah, and then my wife
just missing the crazy hair. That's all.
Yeah, totally missing it. It's all on the inside. All the crazy hair on the inside
goes backwards.
Tickles my brain. Just to touch on what I'm doing now, it's like thematically, I really wanted to keep making stuff that was good for people who are stressed out, but I kind of wanted to broaden it to everybody who's stressed out. So I'm trying to make this music that's kind of engaging on a pop songwriter level in some ways, but also kind of loop oriented, or what's the word I'm trying to come up with?
Ambient kind of thing.
Yeah, ambient. Like the first idea I had was I've been making ambient music for meditation for many years and giving it away on my website for free, chrisballew.org, and put a chiron. So I was like, what can I put a beat to that stuff and maybe do some sort of, the lyrics of some kind? And I tried it and it didn't really work. It turned out I needed to kind of approach it from a different angle. But it was, it's really kind of thematically and lyrically about this, journey of trying to figure out how to be a healthy human, how to relate to your ego, to your inner dialogue and chatter and, perception. Like, a dog thinks we are deficient because we don't have a dog's nose, where we look at a dog and have ideas about perception and being alive and death and birth and the cosmos and all these stuff, like big ideas. So it's fun. It's fun because I'm writing more impressionistic lyrics, like about a feeling, which is a whole different thing from painting a picture with a story,
Yeah.
And it's a really thrilling, like, freedom. Like I'm loosened up to be more abstract and kind of coded with the lyrics, and that's super fun. So I want people to be able to put this stuff on, and they can either really listen to it for bells and whistles and maybe some interesting chord shifts, or they can zone out, put headphones on, or put it on in the room and fall asleep like that. Yeah. When I'm working on listening to an album sequence for these new albums and I fall asleep, I'm like, I am on the right track.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I know that you noted Brian Eno as one of the kind of influences. And he actually had a quote that said, ambient music must be able to accommodate many levels of listening attention without enforcing one in particular. It must be as ignorable as it is interesting. So you kind of just explained that. It's like you could sit back and not listen to it, or you can be super hyper focused on it. Either way, it sounds incredibly great. And I think, anything like Mozart to Pink Floyd, these things work just as well, right? And it's kind of this weird mix that just, when I hear stuff like that, that's kind of like my favorite style of music. Pink Floyd is still my favorite album or rock band of all time, because they have that ability to literally, you could just sit there and be working, or you could be intently focused and trying to learn the song. And you're like, this is incredible either way.
Yeah. Like Money is in, 7/8 time or something. It's a weird time signature. Yeah. It's not like saying, look at me, I'm wacky, I'm jazzy or whatever. It's, I don't know. It's genius because it's immediately accessible, but it's also got a layer of you could nerd out to, you know?
Exactly.
So I'm a massive Brian Eno fan. Can I swear on this program?
Absolutely.
Okay. Cause Brian Eno told me to fuck off one time. So that's my Brian. One time I was in the same airspace as Brian Eno. He told me to fuck.
Well, that's why he was listed as last on the influences though, right?
Yeah. And
you could have had number 2 spot, Brian.
Yeah. He was giving a lecture at Mass College of Art in Boston, and I was walking to the auditorium, and he was outside the double doors to the auditorium talking to somebody that he obviously knew, like a conversation. And people were kind of trickling up and tapping on, like saying, "Oh, we're so happy to see you. Thank you so much. You're a big influence." And then moving on. 2 or 3 people did that, and I was kind of the next to try it, and I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to give him a little accolade moment. And he just turned to me and was like, "Would you please fuck off? I'm trying to talk to my friend." Like, okay.
I was like, 4 is enough, I guess.
Yeah. But I kind of like that Brian Eno told me to fuck off. It's a better story than, shaking his hand.
Yeah, exactly. So I do want to talk about a couple songs and about your songwriting. So a couple of these songs on this are really, really hooky. They have really catchy hooks. So like California Frown, Cold, Cold Sheets, Tenderest Love. These are really, really, really good songs, in my opinion. I really like California Frown. And I noticed somebody actually mentioned on the YouTube comment that they were a big fan of the "When the Hipsters All Need New Hips" line. And I was like, that's hilarious. Like, that's a great line. But I'm just curious because, I think you kind of got this from busking, but you really know how to write a catchy hook. I think it's like your superpower as a songwriter is you can write a hook that gets stuck in people's heads for days, months, years, like decades. Like I said, Dune Buggy, I still get that stuck in my head for no reason. Like I hadn't even heard the song lately. So like kind of talk about how you're putting this together when you're writing it and how this, superpower of yours is kind of making these songs just like these pop songs, but for yourself kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's different too in the early stages. The Presidents and Caspar early stages is more of a vision of a scene or anthropomorphized, like I'd write a song about Little Cuppy or something, It's a physical thing that gets anthropomorphized or a vision of a funny situation. Whereas now I'm really like a receiver. I'm kind of more like, I have a song on my first record called Radar Mind, and it's kind of about how I've just kind of become like a radar dish for impressions. And some of it comes from, I'm really into Ram Dass. Ram Dass is a spiritual teacher guy, but he's very human, very down to earth and rooted in being a human being, but also like really good at helping people navigate that, being in this spacesuit that we're in.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the ideas I've already had, I'd listen to Ram Dass and they would be supported or described or expounded on. And I did visual art for a while based on these, negotiations with my ego and my inner selves and stuff like that. So it's all a
Rorschach painting of your own image.
Yeah, they're kind of like that. They're black and white and they're on my website, chrisballew.org.
Yep. You could say a little louder, chrisballew.org.
chrisballew.org. There's a whole bunch of, on a side note, before we go on, there's a whole bunch of old music, old cassettes that I put up for free there. There's ambient music. There's this crazy stuff. So,
the drafts, all that stuff are on there. So,
all free to be downloaded and all that stuff. So, it's really impressionistic, or it is something somebody describes to me that's funny. Like, so California Frown, I was hanging out with some friends. We get together every so often and we listen to music and talk about music. And we were doing a night where we were listening to Elliott Smith, and we were talking about the sound of his records. And Jack, my friend who brought in the Elliott Smith music to listen to, was like, there's typically what's called a California smile, which is where you take a multi-band EQ and the bass and the treble are high and the middle is scooped out, right? That's more like yacht rock, Christopher Cross, kind of smooth sound, not Doobie Brothers, people like that.
Yeah.
And so he was saying that Elliott Smith's idea was more to do the California Frown, which is you knock out the bass and the treble and you arc it so the mid-range is featured, which I love. That's my favorite thing. But then I started thinking about California Frown is kind of a metaphor maybe for when you're supposed to be behaving as if the whole world is at your feet and everything's great, but inside you're sad. Kind of like how I was with the Presidents, I guess. At certain points. So anyway, I tried to make it about all like California is like this beautiful place that's also falling apart, and hipsters need new hips, and life goes on. Everybody's human, but it's in the context of this like joyous, like psychedelic, beautiful.
Yeah, I definitely felt like it was a little bit more personal too, and a couple of those are Cold, Cold Sheets is obviously the end of a relationship kind of song, or
kind of actually it's funny because that one is, so as I'm writing like Radar Mind impressionistic kind of stuff, I'm also kind of just open to a funny idea for a song falling out of the sky. I woke up one morning, my wife had gone to work at the Pike Place Market where she sells her artwork.
Sure.
And she'd gone for 2 days. She stayed with a friend in Seattle. We're on an island called Vashon Island. So she stayed in town. And I woke up and I literally felt where it would be warm if she had just to get her coffee, and it was cold. And that's where the song came from. And the riff in the song, boom, 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 boom. I wrote that in 1983 on a synthesizer. And it kind of had a home for a while as a song, but I didn't really ever like the song. So I sampled myself.
Nice. Yeah. I feel like I've done that a couple times. I'm like, I wrote terrible lyrics to this awesome beat or awesome, riff or whatever. And I'm like, I'm going to redo that because this is trash.
That's a lot of what this new thing I'm doing is about too, actually. I'm finding that thematically what I'm working with right now is totally what I worked with in the early 80s when I first got synthesizers and guitars and started writing songs. I was trying to be this like sort of conceptual new wave groovy stuff, but I didn't have equipment. I used to sing with a fake English accent.
I'm really? Robert Smith.
Oh my God, so embarrassing. But I go back and I listen to those songs. I was like, okay, that riff, that's a golden nugget. I'm gonna set it aside. Or that lyric or that intention. There's a song on, I think it's on Primitive God. It ends with a song called Venomous Blue. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's towards the end if it's not the end. Yeah.
The last song. That song, it was one of the very first songs I ever wrote, but it was called Cadillac Blue, and it was kind of an anti-suburbia, like a new wave psychedelic punk rock, screw you to suburbia.
Yeah.
And it was just terribly recorded, and like my vocals are awful. But anyway, thematically, I kind of took it and turned it into, again, like it's kind of about success. Like the sky is blue, everything's perfect, but it's been poisoned by expectations or not expressing my true needs or whatever. So
I think it's great. I mean, everything that you've done to this point, I feel like when you listen to the new solo stuff, without even knowing the story that you've just kind of played out, you can kind of feel that within the music. You kind of know that that's the reason why the Presidents kind of stopped being major record labels, stopped being on the radio and touring, all that stuff. And I think it's just a way that you've been able to be DIY for the last essentially 10 years or 12 years or whatever, that it to me feels more refreshing than if you had been still trying to get that record contract like a lot of these played out 90 bands are still trying to do. It's like, we're out here, we're still playing the exact same style of music, trying to recreate ourselves. I'm like, nobody wants to hear this anymore. That's why you're not successful, is because you're not adapting what you're supposed to do. So I think
I'm definitely open to chapters starting and stopping in life.
Yeah.
And, that Caspar chapter, it's funny. I was out on the kayak this morning with Kate, and I was kind of musing on that, like, because we ran into a friend. We beached the kayak, and a friend came out of her house, and she's like, "Oh, we people at the Arts Center here on Vashon really want Caspar Babypants to play." And I felt this like, guilt or kind of like, I'm sorry, but it also made me realize that, I had this vision and I just followed it, and I had so much energy for that vision, so much, like I played 1,300 shows in something like 9 years. I was 9 years active as a live thing, and made 19 records, and, just super focused, and it's gone. Like my impulse to do that is gone. So I can't fake the true joy I felt. It was real, but it's gone in favor of a new form of expression. I'm feeling total joy over this. And then who knows what's next?
Exactly.
I don't know. That's why every time I come up with a little riff or an idea, I record it and put it in my catalog of what I call raw poo, which is also my publishing company name, Raw, for the President. Because you never know. Like if I'm sitting here and I start receiving a traditional country Western song, I write it and then I file it away, because who knows, I might be moving to Nashville in my 70s. Yeah.
One thing I will say is that you seem and have always seemed like an incredibly positive person, even when you're under the stressful situations. What do you attribute to like remaining happy and positive for all these years?
It's really the perspective that I've won the lottery simply by existing.
Yeah.
I realized in 7th grade, when we were doing sex education in school, I realized that the egg the month before me and the egg the month after me were not me.
They lost.
They lost. And I won this incredible, and then on top of that, my parents had a set of kids in their 20s and a set in their 40s. And I was in the 40s set, and my mom had preeclampsia, which is like high blood pressure associated with pregnancy. She was told not to have any more kids after her first. She had a second, and then she waited a bunch of years and had 2 more. And I was one of the 2. So you combine that with the fact that, and it's just I shouldn't be here. This is amazing. Just being alive and looking at light and the water. And we live now on this island, and we have an amazing view and amazing gardens, and it's mellow, and we have tons of friends here. And I don't know, I guess I've been through some majorly dark times. Like I've tasted the underbelly of bad decisions and reckless living and all that stuff. And I guess maybe, you know, there's an idea that you have to kind of go through darkness to get to light. If you try to deny the dark parts, you only give them, it's almost like when you dam a river, you get more pressure, you get more power. So you have to face and experience your darkness to get to your lightness. And I think I've done battle for a lot of years, and I'm not, you know, fully Mr. Light. I have anxiety issues during the pandemic. They came out, and I had, when I got divorced in 2005, I had major panic attacks, and I'm no stranger to therapy and working on myself, and reading and writing about the human condition. I guess it's all toward reinforcing and maintaining that perspective that this is a gift to just be here, and then to get to have a voice as a musician and send it out to other people, like encapsulate myself in a song form, send it out, it gets decoded by another brain, they feel something, and hopefully they feel what I feel when I think about being, you know, pure light and energy and how liberating it is. So that's kind of also the hope in making this new music, is that I can kind of I don't know, shed light on that struggle a little bit, not shy away from darker themes and minor chords and, you know, heaviness, but also temper it with lightness, like, you know, songs that uplift and down.
Absolutely.
Uplift and down drift.
The music is medicine for the soul right there.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. It definitely, for me, like also what I said before, like I feel like a hobbyist is a core idea of the whole thing, because I'm doing this really to make today, Wednesday, July 27th, better. Like I'm writing a song. I was doing my morning stretches and breathing, and I looked up at this window, and there was a wasp on the window. And I was thinking, like, what is that wasp experiencing? It can see the whole world. And all of a sudden there's this window that's preventing it from flying into the world that it already knows. And I'm like, whoa, I think that's something metaphorical about, you know, being a human and having a feeling that there's more to it, but not being able to get through the glass, you know? And so today I'm writing a song called Wasp on a Window, and it's just making today really great.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah. Well, I can play it here. I'll play a second for it right now. Wait a second.
World exclusive right now.
Yeah, I'll just play it. Hook line.
Wasp on a window, I've been living like a wasp on a window. Wasp on a window, I've been living like a wasp on a window pane. I can't see right, I can't see light. I want out, so I search and try to find.
And that's all you get for free.
Nice. That's very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I could sit here and talk to you all day, Chris. I wish I could just, you know, sit on a porch and just talk with you all day, but I know you got things to do. I want to respect your time. I know, you know, obviously the new album is out now. We'll put a link to the chrisballew.org. People, it's free. You can go download it. You can stream it absolutely free. It's great.
It's also on all the platforms.
Yeah, all the regular platforms that you'd have.
Where you stream and steal music.
Yeah. Can't steal it if it's given away for free.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah. Obviously, anything else that you want to plug before we go to today? Like, you want to talk about? I mean, obviously, you've got the new album. You've got anything else that you have coming up? I know you're not going to be touring, but maybe something else that you got on the horizon.
I'm going to be having lunch at the country club here. I've never been to the country club on Vashon for lunch. I'm hoping for like a classic poolside cheeseburger. So I'm looking forward to that. That's something I'd like is lunch, which will be happening in probably 30 minutes or so. So join me.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Even though you will get this message like 5 days late, but you'll be fine. Yeah. One last question before we go to, do you have any new music that you'd recommend people check out?
Oh, yes. My son just apparently is going to be the drummer for the live band version of this solo artist named Marlo Mudd.
Okay.
I really, really like, mellow, gentle acoustic stuff. There's a band that just destroys my soul called Junip. Absolutely there's an album called Fields that is incredible, super inspiring as far as what I'm doing now. What I'm doing now is really inspired by Junip. It's inspired by the Spacemen 3, a band from England called Loop. There's a band called Moon Duo that super inspired me. All the way to like the Stooges, that kind of like fuzzy, heavy. But so, and then the lead singer for Junip has a whole solo career. His name is Jose Gonzalez. Absolutely great. His latest record, what is it called? El Invito, I believe, is fantastic. But he did a record. This is the one. Okay, 2 records everyone should hear: Junip, Fields, and Jose Gonzalez live in Europe with the String Theory. Those are the 2. And then
very cool.
Then listen to Primitive God by me.
Yeah.
And all kinds of connections.
Yeah, if you're going to listen to 2 albums this year, make it these 2, and then if you're going to listen to 3, make it this one.
Yeah. If you stop at 2, then great.
Yeah. All right. I want to thank you so much, Chris, for being here. It's been an awesome pleasure to have you on the show and have a conversation with you. We'll put those notes, those links to all the music, your music, all the other Junip and all these other ones below the episode. So make sure to go check it out, guys. I don't think you can possibly go wrong with anything Chris writes. So you can even go check out all the other bands, Egg, the Giraffes, all that good stuff, Caspar Babypants, all that stuff on chrisballew.org. And guys, remember, the Powered by Rock podcast is powered by our listeners. If you want to show us some support, please be sure to subscribe and share the podcast on social media. You can also make a donation to the podcast to help us keep making awesome new episodes with awesome guests like Chris here. You can find that link in the notes as well. You can see the full video interview on our YouTube and Spotify now as well. If you want to check out some articles, album reviews, list interviews, go to poweredbyrock.com. We actually did an album review for Primitive God. You can go check that out on our absolutely free rocking blog. Find our merch and gear as well, so you can pick up some items to play and look like a rock legend. That's our show for today. Until we see you soon for the next episode, rock on.